Welcome back to A to Z, finishing up here on this Tuesday with our good friend. You can hear him and even see him on our Locked On Sports Atlanta network on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe and like there, but you also listen to the Locked On Falcons podcast. It's Aaron Freeman joining the show as he routinely does. Aaron, welcome back, brother. Good to talk to you.
Always fun to talk with you, Mark.
I commented today earlier about the top of the show about there was a column in The Athletic over the weekend about, with Matt Ryan being gone, it's different, right? Like seems to be like a leadership void on the team this year. And I actually think that's a good thing. And this, this isn't about Matt's play, but Matt being gone is actually better for this organization at this point. Like, I don't want any vestiges of anything that was before sort of still hanging around. And anytime you have your quarterback and your starting quarterback who's been around as long as Matt has, Matt's doing things Matt's way. Like, the coach can interject whatever they want, but if Matt isn't 100% bought into what the coach wants, guess what? Guess who they all follow? The quarterback. And so from a certain standpoint, I actually think Matt being gone kind of helps the culture change that Arthur Smith is trying to bring about. Am I wrong?
No, I think that's a fair assessment of things. I know you've been a big advocate of, a clean break, a refresh, a restart, however you want to call it. And I think that makes a ton of sense for the Falcons to go in that direction. And you have an opportunity for some new voices to emerge because obviously this new regime is looking to build something up differently. Obviously, you still have some guys like Jake Matthews and Grady Jarrett in the locker room that a lot of these young guys are going to be looking towards. But certainly at the quarterback position where, that's the prime leader in your locker room. I certainly think the Falcons will be looking in a new direction. People like Marcus Mariota and Desmond Ridder will have an opportunity to assert themselves this year and in the future.
I know I've said this to several other people who've come on this show. And of course, you've already heard this because what do you do every day when you get up? You listen to A to Z. It's like the first thing you do, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
Get up out of bed, feet on the floor, hit the can real quick, and then pop in A to Z. I kid. But I am not going to give a pass to Arthur Smith or to Kyle Pitts or to even Drake London to a certain extent for having non-productive years. Like, you drafted Kyle Pitts knowing that Matt Ryan wasn't going to be the quarterback at some point and you were transitioning to somebody else. Like, that was the reality you knew was going to happen, right? And you drafted Drake London knowing Matt Ryan wasn't going to be your quarterback. And you did that 2 years in a row in the first round. If you failed to address the offensive line because that was the biggest problem on the offense, I'm not going to give you a pass for not putting up good numbers. Like, Kyle Pitts needs to progress. He needs to have a year that shows progress. I'm not going to necessarily define those numbers yet, but from a target share standpoint, if Kyle doesn't get 120 targets, it's derelict on Arthur Smith and the entire offense. I don't care if Marcus Mariota misses him by a plumb mile and hits a fan in section 206 when he throws it, but it better be thrown in his direction. Like, to me, that's inexcusable. And the people pointing to the offensive line, no. You chose to take these two pass catchers over addressing the offensive line, so it's on you to ultimately use those two pass catchers in a way that is beneficial to the team.
Yeah, I agree with that. I probably set the over-under on Kyle Pitts targets at higher than 120. I think he probably needs a lot more than that, like 150, 160, something like that. I think you're right. I was thinking about this the other day where if the offensive line struggles again, someone like a Jalen Mayfield's going to probably be scapegoated. And I kind of look at it like this, where like it's not Jalen Mayfield's fault that he was kind of rolled out there before he was ready. And so I feel like one of the things that we may wind up seeing this year, if the offensive line doesn't show the progress that I think a lot of people are hoping, and clearly this coaching staff believes they can, is you'll see a lot of people pointing the fingers at the individual offensive linemen. And I kind of flip that and say, like, it's not their fault that they're not good enough, right? Like, they're doing the best that they can. It's really the people making the decisions, the Arthur Smiths, the Terry Fontenays, that if this offensive line struggles, it's really on them more so than the individual components of that offensive line. And so I'm kind of there with you on that front. I think this team, has made some decisions. Certainly we can question some of those decisions, particularly with the investments in the pass catchers and maybe not as many investments on the offensive line and a running game where we know this Arthur Smith offense is kind of predicated off of. And so it's going to be a tall order for Arthur Smith to kind of maximize this group in this running game and this ground attack. to see if he can do that without necessarily having the horses. And so if they don't, that's really on him. If they do, that's also on him, and he'll deserve a lot of the credit as well.
Yeah, 100%. Literally, it'd be 3 yards in a cloud of dust. Like it's a 3-step drop and throw it to the tallest, biggest guy you could find and hope for the best. Right? That's the offensive plan. I'm looking at the calendar right now. It says May 31st, which means tomorrow is June 1st, and post June 1st cuts. How much longer is Deion Jones a Falcon?
I don't know. I mean, the thing I've been thinking and the thing I've been talking with people about is, him being sidelined with this injury is very convenient for the Falcons because if and when we get to mandatory minicamp in a couple of weeks, like he doesn't have to show up, which is a good thing for the Falcons because everybody's sort of telling me that the Falcons are prepared to move on. And at some point in time, they will move on from Deion Jones, whether that's a trade, whether that's a release. It sounds like from everybody I've talked to, no one really thinks a trade is going to develop at any point in the next couple of weeks. So
who's going to trade for an injured guy?
Yeah. So I think he'll probably get released at some point. When that time is, if it's, Friday or whatever the case may be, that's possible. If it's later this month, if they wait till training camp, hoping that something develops via trade talk or whatever
Like
the case
somebody
may
gets
be.
hurt or whatever, and once he starts to get healthy again, there's a necessity for him.
So yeah, it doesn't seem likely that Deion Jones will be there day one of training camp, whenever that is, July, whatever. But your guess is as good as mine between now and then, when the Falcons will decide ultimately to move on.
I mean, look, I hate to assume the worst of people, right? But the timing feels nefarious. Like the timing of understanding the injury and everything, unless the Falcons knew about it and purposely waited OTAs to announce it, which I couldn't understand why. They are the ones on the bad side of it, right? Or again, and the only reason they're willing to make this announcement now at this point in time is because they've exhausted every trade possibility and nobody wants it. Because if you're the Falcons, you would not announce that a player you're trying to trade is hurt, right? Like that's not what would go on ever. And so from that standpoint, the timing is certainly curious. And Deion, from a guy who's already got money in his pocket, may be willing to turn around and just go, guess what? I don't care what kind of situation this puts you in. I'll be here for my roster bonus. I'll be here for my training camp bonus because I'm hurt. You can't not pay me kind of deal, right?
Yeah. That makes sense. Deion Jones potentially makes out like a bandit here because if they wind up releasing him, he gets to choose wherever he gets
exactly.
to go. Yeah,
right, 100%. So I mean, either well played by Deion or poorly played by the Falcons, or maybe a combination of both. Who knows?
Well, he's got Drew Rosenhaus as his agent.
Yeah, he's no dummy, right? I mean, he's been around a while.
For a while.
He's seen a couple of these things go in his athletes' favor. Defensively, I am curious to see what the lineup looks like out at OTAs. Like, are we thinking like it's Ebiketie and Grady Jarrett on one side next to each other? Like that seems like the smartest play to me. With Ebiketie outside him, at least you're putting all your best players on one side. Yeah, sure. It's easy to scheme against, I guess, to block it, but why not run with it?
Yeah, that makes total sense. One of the things I noticed watching Ebiketie at Penn State was he wasn't as great running stunts. And so I know that was something that Lorenzo Carter did really well with the Giants last year, particularly down the stretch when he was getting a lot of those sacks and pressures. So part of me sits there and says, okay, if you want to put two guys next to each other, particularly if you want to run stunts, Grady Jarrett and Lorenzo Carter may make a little bit more sense in that regard. But then again, Dean Pease didn't run a ton of stunts and twists last year, so maybe that's just not necessarily in the plan. And so getting a guy like Ebiketie, one-on-one with the sort of double teams that Grady Jarrett's going to get on the interior, and you get Ebiketie to basically unleash, that technique and those pass rush moves on the outside makes a ton of sense. So I think the Falcons, depending on how they play it, can't go wrong with any combination of their two edge rushers alongside Grady Jarrett. We know that Grady Jarrett will make whoever lines up next to him better, hopefully a lot better than he made Dante Fowler last year. Although Fowler, to his credit, was better in 2021 than he was in 2020. So we'll give Grady Jarrett a little bit of the credit there.
Nowhere to go but up, as they say. I'm just curious what the rest of the defense looks like and how they're going to – I think we can suppose some things. Is Isaiah Oliver just going to be the slot corner the whole time? Is that where they're going to keep him? Is he going to be forced to move back outside? Remember what a disaster that was for year 2 of him under Dan Quinn. Again, like we can suppose some of these things, but I'm really curious to see what Dean Pease has got together, because I think he's very much a guy who, as you said, didn't run stunts because he knew it would be a failing proposition with the players that he had. He's got another year to put more players in there, albeit they're not great talents and not big names, but they do something that Dean Pease likes schematically, which is why they're here. So I'm curious to see how they're all employed.
Yeah, I think, this team defensively, I think, has made significant strides this offseason. I feel like they've made a lot more strides on defense than they did offensively, picking up Casey Hayward, bringing back Isaiah Oliver, adding Ebiketie, adding Carter. It feels like they've made significant gains, but their depth is not great. And so they really kind of need a healthy season because, as you said, who is their kind of backup to Casey Hayward if he was to go down? Would they put Isaiah Oliver out there? As you say, he was not particularly great there. We saw the team struggle at the depth at the nickel cornerback position when Oliver went down a year ago, and they were forced to move Richie Grant there and play Darren Hall there. And I know they're much more excited about what Hall can do in year 2, but some of these areas of the roster that they did get better at in terms of the starting lineup, their depth is not necessarily great there. So it'll be interesting to pay attention to that in training camp to see if some of these young guys, some of these backup players can, give you a little bit more confidence that should one of these, players like AJ Terrell, if they lost AJ Terrell or Grady Jarrett, that would be kind of a death knell to this defense moving forward. So that's going to be something important to keep an eye on later this summer.
I believe I said he was an abomination out there. I didn't say he was not good. I would like to be quoted correctly. I believe I called him just terrible. So let's make sure we get that correct. I kid. But and then one more here. I believe this team will be more competitive than people are giving it credit for. And I attribute that to Arthur Smith. And I've said this repeatedly, that I don't think it's look, if they split with the Saints and the Panthers, 6 wins for this team wouldn't be entirely out of the realm of possibility. And if you can do that and get 1 win less than when you had with Matt Ryan on this team, that is a massive coaching job done by Arthur Smith and Terry Fontenot as far as putting a roster together. But I think this team is going to be a lot more competitive than what people think.
Well, they have to be, right? Like, they're not going to get cupcakes on their schedule. They're not facing 4 out of the top 6 teams that are going to be at the top of next year's draft in all likelihood.
Right.
Maybe Pittsburgh's up there, maybe Chicago's up there, but you're not getting a whole bunch of cupcakes like you were getting last year when you had like the 3rd or 4th easiest schedule in the league. You got the 9th hardest schedule in the league. And, last year we saw this team really struggle against the playoff caliber teams, getting blown out by teams like Dallas and New England and, struggling against Tampa Bay. And they're facing a whole lot of those teams: Cincinnati, Baltimore, the Rams, Arizona, Tampa Bay, of course, New Orleans. Like, they have to be more competitive in these games against some of these quality opponents. So if they're not, that's a big problem for this Arthur Smith regime moving forward. We can't see any more 43-3 blowouts this season.
No, certainly not. Follow him on Twitter at FalcFans. That's FALC fans. Aaron Freeman, host of Locked On Falcons. Always great to spend some time with you, brother. I hope you had a wonderful Memorial Day weekend. We'll do this again real soon.
Absolutely.
All right, there we go. And that'll wrap things up for us here today on this Tuesday. Certainly appreciate you guys making A to Z your first listen every day. Make sure you guys check out Hitting Hard with John Chuckery and ATL Day Ones with Jarvis Davis and Tanitra Batiste, and all the great shows we have here on the Locked On Sports Network, Locked On Sports Atlanta. On Twitter at Locked On ATL. Of course, I'm at Mark Zinno. Back tomorrow. Another great show. You guys have a great day. Don't get any crap from anybody. See ya.